Gentlemen, welcome back to another Getting to Know a Fan, and we've got probably what is rare as rocking horse poo, some of you said, but I found one. I've got the wonderful Shannon. He does part-time at Gold Coast Sunscast, so check that out. Link will be in the description, but great bloke, massive sporting fan. How are you doing, Shannon?
Doing really well, mate. How about yourself?
Oh, can't complain, mate. I can't complain. A lot of the chat told me that I wouldn't find a Gold Coast fan. So I am smiling to myself that I found a passionate one as well.
Right, they don't know what they're talking about. There's at least 3 of us out there.
Well, we've talked off camera, and I can tell you're a very passionate man for your Suns as well, which makes me excited. And I think I speak on behalf of everyone, and we touched on it off camera. Gold Coast are probably everyone's second team, aren't they? They're like the vanilla ice cream, I think, of the AFL. That they're not really offensive, and everyone wants to see you do well. What is it like being a Gold Coast fan? Like, explain to the chat. Obviously, I think it's very tough because you kind of probably the shopping mall of the Victorian clubs, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is tough. It is tough being a fan. The first thing you cop is how come you're a mid-30s man who supports a team that's only been in the competition for a decade, and they want to know your backstory. And there's a story behind that, which we won't go into right now. But yeah, we do feel like an animal at the zoo sometimes. I go to games all around Australia, and yeah, you get looked at. It's like, look, there's a Gold Coast fan. It's yeah, there's not too many of us until we congregate sort of in our areas behind the goals. When we actually do have that strength in some smaller numbers, but yeah, we're one of a kind, that's for sure.
And obviously, you got the benefit. One of my sporting memorabilia is that I've got a Gary Ablett Jr. signed Gold Coast Sun shirt. What was it like having the little master at the football club? Obviously, that was a really exciting time, wasn't it, for Gold Coast in that period? Because you really looked like what GWS were a couple of years ago. That looked like what was Gold Coast was being built.
Yeah, Gazza, he was a great person to have around the club. Probably good leader, especially for some of the young people coming through. He definitely probably increased our membership by about 30% in those early years, and you can see how things turned around when he did hurt his shoulder with that McCaffer tackle back in 2014. I think that was sort of the turning point for the whole club. But as a fan, being able to go to games and watching him every week was something special. I'll be able to say that forever. I watched Gary Ablett Jr. in the peak of his career. It's something that you'll never be able to take away from me.
It was scary how good he was. I was actually just doing some recon before this video, and I'm looking at the team he nearly made finals with, and like half of the list, you're like, who the hell is that? And they're beating top 4 sides because of how good Gary Ablett is. Like, it made me think he was a lot better than probably we give him credit for, because I don't think many players could have rose a team with bit part players to the heights that he did. Like, he carried you on your back at times.
Exactly right. And that's one of his strengths was he didn't buckle when he was carrying teams. Like, the Gold Coast without Ablett, and there are a lot of questions asked when we formed, whether we went the right way by taking Ablett rather than that sort of GWS approach of spreading that sort of talent out a little bit more. But yeah, we wouldn't have, through those early years where it looked like we might have been heading towards success, the 2013-14, we wouldn't have been where we were without Gaz on the side. And that shows from, once again, the moment McCaff laid that tackle on Gary, done his shoulder, he never played the same again for us. And everything was downhill from there. We were a shoo-in to make finals. I think we'd won 5 or 6 games in a row, beating teams comfortably. And from that moment, I think we only won 1 or 2 games for the rest of the year. So, he was a good player, but it wasn't just about his skill sets either. The morale, just everything around the team, just everything changed. Everything went downhill. It's not until, we start seeing players like Tuke Miller, Noah Anderson coming through now who are real leaders on field and off field that, we haven't had that same glimmer of hope in one player or, 1 or 2 players.
Well, the excitement's there at Gold Coast, isn't it? I watched the press release today of your training, and Tuck Miller looks insane.
Oh, that photo, that is insane. Yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
Even I got a little bit scared. I was like, oh dear, we're going to have to play these guys. And I really like Stewie Dew as well. I think I've enjoyed... I've touched on Dew a lot because I remember a couple of years ago, he talked about the aim was to play finals and win the Premiership. And the media kind of laughed at him, and I got excited. I was like, I want to hear that. Like, that's a man who's setting targets and not here to make up the numbers. And last year was a year where I think you were quietly successful. You finished 12th, but just a couple of wins out of the 8. But there was points where you were in the 8 and around the 8 and were building something quite formidable. How did you see 2022 as a Gold Coast fan?
Yeah, exactly the same way. We were in and about it, and we had that stretch after the bye week of, I think we needed to win, 1 or 2 out of the 4 games, but we lost 3 by under a goal or very close to it, which was really heartbreaking. Games that I know against Collingwood, we were well and truly, we should have had that one locked away. Other games we'd come back, but just didn't quite finish it off. So we were around that mark. I think I can't remember off the top of my head. I've just spent 7 weeks in the USA, and so I'm a little bit out of touch, but I think we might have finished on, 2 wins out, and to have that stretch of a couple of games by less than a goal, and we were pushing good teams like Melbourne to within 2 goals when they were at their peak. So, Sydney's another team we beat at the SCG. So we are still a young team. We're having our bad games. We're losing games that we probably should be winning, but that's to be expected with that inconsistency. But I think the signs are promising, and overall, it's not the same for all Suns fans, but personally, I think 2022 was a big pass mark, and I can see a lot of light at the end of the tunnel.
It felt good. I remember watching you guys, and I remember watching that Hawks game, which you just went down into, and it kind of put you out of the finals race.
Yeah.
But I was watching you and thinking we'd played the Hawks, and I think Hawks were really underrated because they're a proper Sam Mitchell side. They're physical and they're ugly, and they're a tough side to beat. And I just saw a lot of fight in Gold Coast. It made me smile, even though they lost. I was like, there's a lot of fight in this team. Do you know what I mean? They were willing to go toe-to-toe with Hawks, who were playing a bit of dirty footy. And you've got a really exciting list, haven't you? Rao and Anderson, that complement Tuck Miller. I look at that list and I think you're finally nailing it in the demographic of the list. It actually looks like you're building for the future and the now.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got the midfielders you've just brought out, and there's still quite a lot of depth. Like our VFL had a deep run. We come to within a goal of playing in the VFL Grand Final last year, which is something that gets overlooked a fair bit. It's no small feat. And we still had some solid players coming through the ranks at VFL level, like Elijah Hollins. He debuted late in the season at top level, was an absolute star for us. Sam Flanders hasn't really had his shot. When he has played AFL, unfortunately, he's been sort of stuck in a forward pocket just because of that depth. But in the VFL, he was averaging like 40 disposals over the last month of football, and doing okay with them as well. You've still got Fiorini, who's proven that he's, more than serviceable at the top level. So, the depth is there. It makes it hard to sort of go into a draft and look at what we're needing when really the only thing that the Suns are relying on at the moment is just getting games into the kids so we can sort of step it up the next preseason to take that next level. And I think 2023 is, sort of the next step up for us. I think that's where we can push forward.
I think the big thing overlooked as well was you lost Ben King, and you saw Max King, how much he developed last year and how he suddenly started to really lead that St Kilda forward line.
Yeah.
And I think Ben is equal, if not greater, than Max King, particularly from the kicking technique standpoint. I think that's a forgotten part because I think I would love to have seen that side with Ben King in, because I think that sometimes that was probably where, when I watched Gold Coast, where it fell off. I thought maybe the forward line needs them 2 toes. You're using Levi, and as a Carlton fan, we love Levi, but we know he's not a game breaker. He's not going to win you games. I think Ben King is that X factor forward, and I think you missed him a little bit.
If nothing else, having Ben King back this year really opens up Mabior as well. Like Mabior surpassed, I think, even the most optimistic of fans' expectations this year. But it definitely frees him up a little bit, doesn't it? Will probably bring out the best in Chol. And, even if Ben King's only kicking 40, 50 goals for the year, it's still 40 or 50 more than we might have had last year.
It's definitely a side that when you actually look at the Gold Coast side, it's tough to do a 22, which I don't think it has been for a long time. I think that's always a sign of excitement if you struggle to put the pieces in the puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. And even now, we've got injuries and we don't know where they stand. We're all expecting players like Lockie Weller and Will Power to be sort of, returning after the bye this year. And now there's reports coming out they could be playing week 1. They're looking good in pre-season, which that's another big issue we had in 2022 was our sort of half-back line. We were so depleted there. We had Connor Budrick, who's one of our rising stars, done his ACL. Lockie Weller done his ACL. Will Powell had a significant leg injury. And, for our backline, that's just absolutely decimated it. And, not just on a skill level, but structurally, we just couldn't replace that. So having those sort of players come back as well and, sliding them into the best 22, it's just creating competition, which is really healthy.
And you're talking about the depth. Obviously, you had the trade period, and with going into the trade period, what were you looking for? What did you think, if we can get this, we can jump and get into that A? What were you hoping for?
Trade period, it was really hard. A lot of people were sort of screaming for us to get that sort of A-grade midfielder, but as I touched on, I don't think that's what we need. I did, I was looking towards getting a strong halfback, so we'll see how Ben Long goes for the Suns. It's a really interesting pickup. He really hit his straps towards the end of the year for St Kilda. But just shoring up our back line with all these injuries that we had potentially to start 2023 was something that we needed to do. But overall, I think our two main moves were bringing in Berry and Long, and I'm pretty happy with that. They're not going to be players who are, knocking down the doors for the best and fairest, but just serviceable soldiers and players who are going to want to be fighting for that best 22 spot.
I really like Ben Long. For those who watch this channel know my wife is the world's biggest St Kilda fan, so he's a guy that I see a lot of, and I like him. I think he brings that mongrel, he brings that hard edge. And he's no frills. Like, you can trust Ben Long for 22 games a season. He's going to give you a 6.5 out of 10 every game as his worst mark. And I actually like Tom Berry. I mean, he spent a lot of time in the area. We know Queensland's a big place, but it's not like he's moved to Timbuktu. He's literally down the road from where he was. And I think he's a guy that showed a little bit at Brisbane, and he's obviously going to get a more opportunity at Gold Coast. And I think I thought it was safe. I actually thought it was a mature Gold Coast thing. I think Gold Coast could have fallen into the trap of maybe spending big and trying to snare it. But how did you see the Bowes deal? Obviously, that was probably the most controversial deal. And I've been very critical that the AFL have allowed GWS and Geelong to suddenly get pick 7 for when they've won the flag. How did you see that as a fan?
Jack Bowes is probably close to my favourite player at the Suns, so a bit of a nerve being touched there still. But I do understand why the club done it, and when you take emotions out of the equation, it does make sense. And even from opposition fans, you got to look at the bigger picture of what it means for the Suns, and if losing that the portion of salary we were paying him means that we can sign Noah Anderson this year. That's definitely an advantage. And do we really want to be, by having 2 top 10 picks, which we would have had if we kept pick 7, we're stuck stuck paying two bigger salaries going forward if we had drafted another player. I think, what was it, pick 7, wasn't it, that we did Geelong? So it's all about spreading that sort of that age, that salary around a little bit. And I guess it's a good show of faith that the club have got in the squad that we've got now, saying that we don't need that top pick. It remains to be seen as to whether it was a fair deal or not, or whether Geelong were really blessed with it. But I can only say from a Gold Coast standpoint that now that the dust has settled, I've taken emotion out of it. I can see that it was a good move for the club.
Yeah, it was. Obviously, I think for a rival fan, I think I understood why Gold Coast did it, and we see AFL clubs do it. Like Brodie Grundy was sold for a bag of chips, and he's the top 3 ruckman. So I don't see much difference between what you did. I think it annoyed me that Geelong were the ones who did it. I think if that was a deal that you'd done with North Melbourne, I probably wouldn't have cared and gone, all right, well, at least North benefited. It was more... maybe just jealousy of Geelong.
Well,
jealousy.
Rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer is a pretty common theme, isn't it?
But you did go into the draft and you did nail it. Bailey Humphrey came on this show, and I think he was like my boy since about April last year. I fell in love with the Bailey Humphrey story. A real good kid, and we know in the trade period you lost Rankine and you lost Bowes, who we've touched on, and you lost a few players. I think, in my opinion, how I see it, Bailey is a huge upgrade on Rankine and a lot more versatile. I think, how did you see Bailey come in, and are you excited about young Bailey coming out for the Suns?
Yeah, absolutely. There was pretty much, even going into draft night, or draft day as it was for me in the USA, but we still had no idea. It was down to 2 players, whether it was going to be Bailey Humphrey or Ruben Gimby from WA coming across. But Bailey, he definitely fits a need for the club with Rankin gone. Our forward line's looking like a bit of a weapon going forward, and we've spoke about the midfielders that we've got, but we are lacking those midfielders that sort of have a second string to their bow, someone who can go forward or go back, and having one that can actually sit in the forward line, learn their craft up forward, all whilst sliding through the midfield is going to be great. And he seems like a bit of a character. You probably had a great chat with him, and to have that sort of personality come to the coast and actually want to be here, I think that's going to be good for fans, good for culture, good for the club rooms, everything in general. So we're excited to have him.
He's definitely someone as well with his off-the-field activities. Like, you talk about building a culture, he does a lot with the mental health side of things, and he's a big spokesman of that. He's a very mature, like, as a dad myself, speaking to him, it scared me he was 18, because I was like, when I was 18 and speaking to a lot of 18-year-olds like I did, you can see his maturity in the way his brain works is a lot more sophisticated and more advanced because of what he's been through. And that excited me, because I think you want confidence, but also there's a little bit of realization there that the gravity of what he's doing. So there's an appreciation of what he's about to do. So no, I love Bailey, and I'll be secretly cheering Gold Coast on, because I'm a big Bailey fan as well now. So I've fallen in love with the kid.
Hopefully he can find his way into the best 22 nice and early, and really get a kickstart on his career. Might not necessarily be the way. I know we look at Elijah Hollins and how long the Gold Coast were like holding him back, and he finally got his shot late in the year, and it was probably worked out to be the best for his development. But I guess it's horses for courses, and everyone's a little bit different. But I really want to see him wearing the colours as early as possible.
I mean, I think he's my tip to win the Rising Star. So I think he'll be there. But you talked about Elijah. We drafted his brother, Ollie, and I know Ollie on the show was talking about his brother's work ethic is one of the hardest. Like, he's an incredibly hard worker, and we saw Elijah break in. He did look really exciting, didn't he? And that makes me excited because we've got his brother, but he looks like an exciting guy that no one's talking about.
Well, I think they're 2 different players. Ollie seems to be sort of more of an outside runner, might be more serviceable on the wing, which is probably going to be good for Carlton, actually. I was secretly hoping I didn't want us to reach for Ollie with pick 5, but my sort of hope was only a bit of a pipe dream, really, was that we sort of trade down a little bit and, take Ollie with that sort of pick 9 or 10 or whatever we could get. But no, definitely wish Ollie all the best going forward. And hopefully we don't have to hear from Carlton fans for the next 10 years about Elijah going to Carlton to join his brother.
You won't hear that from me. I am a strong... I am an anti, even though Ollie Henry did it. I do not understand these young men wanting to play with their brother. Like, I've got 3 brothers, and the last thing I'd want to do is play on a football team with them. I'd rather play against them and be better than them. I don't think there's any loyalty with me. So I don't understand it, but some kids might be different.
You hear it all from fans more than anything. Like, we still cop the... It's funny how it's never... Max is never going to come to Gold Coast and join Ben, but we still hear, on a weekly basis about how Ben's going to go to St Kilda and join Max. I don't think there's any truth in it at all, and I don't know what the players want, but as you said, it doesn't seem to happen too often. I think it's just a bit of fans' wish list. There's a bit of romance about, the 2 brothers playing together from a fan perspective.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you watch the Ollie interview, the last 10 minutes, he did say he was looking forward to going against his brother. And we did have a bit of a joke of him chasing him down and coming out of position to tackle him and have that one up at Christmas dinner the next year to say that I thought you're holding the ball. So
yeah,
that's how it should work, I think, the rivalry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably best for the family too.
Now, I thought the best bit of business Gold Coast did was actually in the rookie draft. And I thought there was 2 players that I was surprised no one had gone for. But I thought Connor Blakely was a really good acquisition, particularly when you lose Bowes, who can pretty much play anywhere. He's one of them players that seems to be able to fill in anywhere and do a job. And Connor did that job for Freo, and he's still a good age. And you got Jake Steen as well, who was highly touted by GWS, and I was surprised got delisted with the age of their backline. But 2 really reliable players that really do replace Bowes and Corbett, who you lost in the trade window for free. What did you think of them second chance players coming through?
Yeah, I've been a big fan of Blakely for quite some time, and even I think when we picked up Lockie Weller's been sort of in his ear trying to get him across from all reports for a while now. The best thing about Blakely, apart from, what he might actually do on field, is his desire to actually get to best 22 football. He came out the other day and said he's not here to make up numbers. He wants to play football at the top level. So that's really exciting. And for Stein to actually get to us and to fill that need. And once again, it's players with hunger that are coming to the club, not players that are just sort of walking into a best 22 role and thinking they're a shoo-in for a game. It's players that know they've got to earn their spot. And for a team that's still, young and upcoming, I think that's really important. To have that competition there.
I think you've drafted and traded really well. Like, I think there's a lot of logic in here, and I think that I want to try and dispel this myth because I hear it a lot, and I'm sure you do, that Gold Coast, they get presents from the AFL and they get gifts, and it annoys me because we said off camera, we spoke, and my biggest annoyance with the AFL is I think that throwing draft picks at Gold Coast is the most ridiculous thing in the world because effectively all you're doing is giving a Victorian or an interstate club the development done by Gold Coast, and we reap the rewards for half the price. How do you feel about the change? Because I have noticed in the last 2 years, there's been a real strategy change from Gold Coast that you're focusing on these second chance players who are going to be going for the right reasons for their career. Levi Casbolt, I think, has been brilliant for you guys I think it's very mature signings, but you're also, I think, really talent acquisitioning kids with good mindsets as well that aren't going to run. How would you respond, firstly, to fans who go, give us loads of first-round picks? But 2, how do you see the changing your strategy as well?
Well, for fans that are saying that, what do you expect when, you got Collingwood fans, Richmond fans, all that, saying, you're getting all these picks and that? Well, stop poaching the players. Stop coming in with bigger offers. I know they're not controlling the recruiting room and all that, but there's, if you want the AFL to work and with the direction that they're heading, to have 18 clubs and all these television rights and that, the Gold Coast has got to be successful. The Gold Coast has to work. And I say that from a football fan perspective, not as a Gold Coast fan. I think having a successful team on the Gold Coast is what's best for the AFL. So it's in the AFL's best interest and 17 other clubs' best interest to make sure that we sort of get that foothold up. But as you also said, I don't necessarily agree that is the answer. It doesn't mean that I want to hand Noah Anderson back for because we got him with the gifted pick too. But yeah, what we are needing are them sort of mature players who want to play, who want to earn their spot, who want to come up through the ranks of VFL and show that they're ready for the top level, not players who walk in as an 18-year-old, string a few good games together and then get poached for an extra 100, 200,000 a year to the southern states. So it's not going to work for us.
It's weird because players get linked with Gold Coast leaving all the time. Like, you've got two very famous midfielders that I'd imagine Victorian clubs would move heaven and earth to move. Yeah. But one guy that never gets linked away, and I don't understand how, is Tuck Miller. Like, he's the Brownlow favourite already with the bookies coming into the next year. I don't know if that picture has influenced it, but Tuck Miller seems the most loyalist player ever because he doesn't even get linked with any rumours. And if I was a list manager, he would be the first person I'd poach from Gold Coast. I think he's sensational.
Absolutely. And he's, I think a big part of that is just from very early in the days, even before he really took that next level, which he's been on the last 2 or 3 years. He's shown the passion about wanting to be on the Gold Coast, which, it has happened in the past, but not on the same level. The only other player I can think of who's shown that amount of passion was Dave Swallow, who fought through the early reports of joining his brother Andrew at North Melbourne. And, those reports never went away until Andrew retired. And sure enough, Andrew ended up on the Gold Coast in some capacity. But those reports were always there. And, Dave stuck a flag in the ground and said, no, I want to be part of success for the club. And that's the Gold Coast sort of owe him for that. He probably hasn't taken his football to that level, mostly due to injury, that some might have expected with the number one pick. But he's just been one of our most loyal soldiers, loyal servant, and we want to reward him with some form of success. So hopefully that's not too far away. But yeah, Took's sort of the same. He's put that flag in the ground and said, I'm a Gold Coast man. I'm all about success. I'm about taking this club to the promised land. And hopefully that's not too far away from him. Hopefully we can really reward that faith that he's putting the club in the direction that we're heading.
He's definitely a player that deserves to play finals. Like we talk about Cripps a lot on this show. Obviously, he's too good not to play finals. I have Miller in that same category. He is a guy that should be playing Saturday night, prime time, elimination final. And he's way too good not to have that in his career. So talking about success, how is 2023 in your mind? What is a successful year for yourself?
Oh, for the first time in what is it, our 12 years of playing AFL football, I think anything short of 8th spot on the ladder would be not a win. I think this is our year where we really push for that final spot, and we were really up in the mix last year. As we spoke about, there was only a couple of games in it, and those couple of games were close results. So we pushed clubs last year, even went through that peak of our injury concerns. So this year, touch wood, that nothing goes bad on the injury front. But yeah, I'm really expecting finals this year. I'm not saying that we're going to be pushing top 4 and, making a deep run, but I just want to be representing in September and, giving the kids that experience, that hunger. And there's something there'd be something about, making it to finals, sliding into 7th or 8th spot and getting knocked out first round, that going into 2024, that's just going to raise the kids through another pre-season of that hunger, that passion, and probably getting that close and not making it might be actually pushing players to sign on a little bit longer, being so close.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think when you look at GWS, I think GWS had that issue that you had at the start, that they'd have players and every 2 years someone left. But you did see when they made finals, it kind of stopped that kind of link with Victorian clubs and interstate clubs and moving, because obviously they were successful. They were a team that was potentially going to win the flag. I think that's huge for Gold Coast. I think you guys sneak in the 8. I think suddenly then, you know what, there's something there, isn't there, to sell to players. Look, do you want to move to North and be outside of the 8 for 2 years? Or do you want to stay here and potentially we attract more talent and make a push for the flag?
And it's not even a push for the flag as well. We've got that core group of players which are in that right age bracket where we're not just talking, a 1 or 2 year premiership window. It could be a sustained period of success if all goes well, and that passion and that love for the club's there. Why not Gold Coast? Why can't we play, top 4 football for 6-7 years in a row? It's working for clubs like Geelong, Richmond. Why not us? And I think that's a direction that the club's going with their list strategies at the moment. They're not setting themselves up for one tilt at a flag or one tilt at, a top 4. We're really setting ourselves up for some sustained success.
I think I speak for everyone watching that we wish the best for Gold Coast. We do, because I think I agree with you. I think it's great for the game. I think if it gives hope to Tasmania, if we're going to have that 19th team, that if we finally get all of the new clubs in the A and we find a way. And I always think GWS kind of got the benefit of the mistakes AFL made with you guys. I think
100%, 100%.
And I feel sorry for Gold Coast, because I always think, well, everyone always goes, well, GWS did it. I'm like, yeah, but the AFL had 5 years of experience of what not to do when they were trying to help Gold Coast out. It should be quite easy.
Yeah, mistakes were made, but, we live and we learn from those mistakes. And we talk about Tasmania as another team as well, and don't write off Northern Territory. So the strong links that the Gold Coast are putting in with the NT at the moment, I think that's going to be another good thing for AFL as well.
I would love a 20-team league, and I love the partisan atmosphere in the Northern Territory games. I think that them guys are wild, aren't they? Like, you see the fans, they love the footy. It's exciting, and I agree with you. I'd love a Northern Territories and a Tassie team 20, because I think 19 is ridiculous for a league. Needs to be the 20th anyway, and I think Northern Territories, we'd love it.
Bye rounds just don't work. But I think the Suns now, I don't know if you're aware, but we've got I think it's 9 NT players on our list, which is crazy. No AFL teams ever had that many, I wouldn't have thought. 2 home games in Darwin this year. It's such a good thing for football up here. I just hope. I don't want the Suns to move sort of permanently to Northern Territory, but I really hope that that's the direction the AFL's looking long term.
Mate, I agree with you. I think it's a massive football mecca as well, isn't it? We forget some great players come out of Darwin, and you do have strong links, like you say, Gold Coast there, bringing them players through, which is exciting. But for everyone at home, make sure you go and watch Shan's Gold Coast Suncast. I'm sure you're going to start bringing some more back this year if you're getting into finals, aren't you, Shan?
I'm hoping so. It's going to, the fans will come thick and fast once we start winning the games convincingly, that's for sure.
And where else can we find you, mate, if we want to touch base with you and see your musings on football?
We've got a pretty good following on our Big Footy. And just some of the Suns Gold Coast Rumours Tips page on Facebook. And just look out for me. Say good day.
Well, mate, thank you very much for joining us. We wish you all the best. Obviously, the Carlton fans watching were very familiar with Gold Coast Suns, but we wish you the best in 2023. And I've really enjoyed this, mate. Thank you very much for educating us about the Gold Coast.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.